Hello, everyone. Welcome to our November 2022 Business Applications NYC event. We're joined today by members of the NYC Business Applications User Group and Power Platform Group and the newly transitioned Power Platform User Group on the Microsoft platform, which will replace the other two groups. I would like to thank Hugo Bernier from Microsoft for joining us today and delivering this session. I also want to thank the members of the event organizer committee, Aaron Fishman, Mihir Shah, Arun Vinoth, and myself, Eric Levin. During the presentation, if you can, please keep yourself muted to allow everyone to hear better and remove background noise. And you can ask questions at any time in the chat window or by raising your hand in Teams. So now let's give a warm welcome to Hugo Bernier. Hugo is a principal program manager for the Microsoft Power Pages teams in the Dynamics 365 and Power Platform Community Success Team. I hope I got that right.
Yep.
In today's session, hopefully I'm right about this, Hugo will walk us through some of the basics of Power Pages, which was recently announced as GA, and the evolution of the product from Power Apps portals into Power Pages, and some of the latest announcements from Microsoft Ignite. So let's give Hugo a warm welcome. And Hugo, you're free to start presenting at any time. Thanks again for agreeing to present to this user group.
Awesome, thank you. You should see my screen.
Yes.
Awesome. All right, let me just move this so I can see the chat in case there's questions. And let me get started. So thank you for the introduction. Again, my name is Hugo Bernier. I work in the Dynamics 365 and Power Platform Community Success Team. And so my job is to make sure that the power users, the user groups, the super users, the MVPs, all the events, all these things is really what I'm supposed to be helping people in the community to make sure that they are successful with the products. And one of my areas of focus is Power Pages. So I was very excited when Power Pages was announced, and we'll talk a little bit about this. But if at any time you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, on Twitter. I got the QR code here, so you can get a hold of me, and I'm always happy to chat with you. I have to admit, over the last few weeks have been kind of crazy because we were working on. We just recently did the Power Platform Conference. We did Ignite. We've got the Airlift coming up, and all sorts of other conferences happening. But I promise you, I will eventually get back to you if you reach out to me. Speaking of community, if you haven't done so already, this is kind of my platform. This is where I work, is on the Power User community. So if you go to aka.ms/community rocks, you'll be able to sign up to be part of the community if you're not already part of it. But if you're part of this user group, more than likely you are on the platform. Just don't hesitate to to contribute to the community, ask questions. If you've got some answers, don't hesitate to respond to people, because, as the economy is changing, one thing that we know is that when times get tough, people turn to the community. Right? They turn to each other to help each other. So please contribute, or go ask questions again. All right. So one of the things that we want to talk about is, we know those stats, right? That 70% of new applications in the enterprise by 2025 will be developed in low code. And this is a trend that is, we may or may not like this trend, but it's a trend that's really happening. And the reason for that is because there's not enough people in pro developers to be able to actually keep up with the demand. And so what we're seeing more and more is people are just starting to roll up their sleeves and starting to build their own applications. And the one thing that I want to make clear, because I'm part, again, of the Power Platform Community Success Team, but one thing that I always try to make sure that we're not we're not saying irresponsibly is that anybody can build an app, right? It's not necessarily true, right? Anybody has the opportunity to pick up the products like the Power Apps, Power Pages, and Power BI and Power Automate. Everybody has the opportunity to pick up these products and start building something. But really, what we need to look at is that this is for the Fusion teams to work together. The people who understand the business and the people who understand technology and people who understand IT infrastructure. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But it's important to understand that because that's definitely going to come into play even more when we're talking about Power Pages. So we all know the Microsoft Power Platform. When I built this presentation, I kind of, because it was for New York, I kind of built a presentation tongue-in-cheek with the idea of Spider-Man and Spider-Verse. So that's why you see the comic font here. And I'll show you some scenarios a bit later where this comes into play. But we all know the Power Platform, right? And when we wanted to build applications, we up until recently we had pretty much Power Apps, right? And Power Apps, if you were using Power Apps, you had kind of two opportunities. You could build internal apps for your employees and build like a Canvas app or a model-driven app, or you could build external websites for your citizens and customers and vendors and all that stuff, and that was Power App Portals. But Power App Portal was not necessarily the most user-friendly, right? It kind of expected you to understand HTML, JavaScript, Liquid, CSS. It was powerful, and it still is very powerful. In fact, if we look at Power App Portal over the last, it's going to be 6 years now, it's been growing about 170% year over year in terms of how much people are using it. And the types of applications that people have been building has been things like citizen services, application processing, registration, FAQs, and partner portals. One thing I want to point out, you may notice that we don't have a heck of a lot of websites in here that are just like a brochure website, because Power Pages and Power Apps Portal was not really built with that intention to create just a static public website. It's absolutely designed to let you connect to your data in a secure way and to create data-connected applications. And that's the same is true today with this new product called Power Pages. So if we think about what Power Pages is, really, it's something that it takes the power of or the capacity of Power Portals, which again we've used for the last 6 or so years, and we've added low code. We've added kind of that digital first experience to make sure that it really becomes like a Power Platform product, and to really allow everyone to build websites and apps. Now you might say, well, wait a minute. Again, do you expect me to believe that anybody in my company can build a publicly accessible website and anybody can now expose my data to anybody on the internet? And it's like everything else that we, in the Power Platform, is the secret is to make sure that everyone can build solutions while protecting your systems and your data. And one of the ways to do that is to use governance. And so we'll show you today how you can use Power Pages and how we built Power Pages from the start with consideration for governance and consideration to working with pro developers and consideration for application lifecycle management. And in fact, one of my favorite things that I like to say is low code is a team sport, right? And this is not something I coined, but it's certainly my favorite sentence. Because you got the business users, you got the developers, and you got the IT admins, and they all need to work together to build solution. And again, maybe sometimes our friends in marketing at Microsoft like to say, "Oh, anybody can build an app," and just leave it at that. It's the responsible thing to do is to talk about how everyone can build applications when working in consideration with the rest of the organization when it comes to things like governance and security and things like that. And so I'll skip this next slide because this is the same slide that I just showed you. But one of the reasons why we talk about kind of that fusion team model, or the ability for business people to work closely with the developers and IT pros, and where this is more relevant even with Power Pages, is one of the things that we see all the time is business people, they understand their business, they understand their processes. They just need something to be able to do their job better. But usually when they talk to IT people, they try to explain it in a way that they think we need to hear it. And they tend to want to translate things in a way that, again, like doesn't necessarily make sense. They tend to talk about requirements. And so here's an example of something that we want to build in the real world. That's not a website, it's actually a real world object. But here's requirements, right? So I want a gas engine, I want 4 wheels, I want a steering wheel, I want brakes, and I want exhaust. So if you're reading these requirements and you're trying to say, okay, well, what is it that he's trying to build? You might have a few ideas, right? You might think that it's obviously a different kind of car or truck or something like that. It's not very clear. But imagine if we could talk to our business users and instead of talking about requirements, talk about goals. So here's an example of the same thing that I'm trying to build, but I'm talking about my goals. And so my goals are these 2 things. I want to be able to mow the lawn, and I want to be able to be seated comfortably when I'm mowing the lawn. So with these 2 goals, instead of requirements, I'm able to actually describe something that hopefully you're able to make sense of. And this is where kind of our scenario comes into play with Power Pages, where I'm going to introduce you to a character, right? He's a maker. He understands his business, and he has to build a website. And him being able to build parts of the website using Power Pages is going to really help deliver something of value. So our character is Miles, and Miles is a longtime employee at the city. He started as an intern like many years ago, and his job is to help build programs to keep the city clean. He wants to reduce crime and generally do good for the community. And he's really good at it. He understands the ins and outs of the business better than anybody else. It's almost like he's got a sixth sense about this stuff. Now, the mayor, well, recently there's been a crime spree around the city, right? Police department is so swamped that small business owners are getting robbed multiple times before the police even gets there to investigate. And because it's an election year, and the citizens are upset, the mayor has announced that the city will launch an anonymous minor crime reporting website next month before the elections, so for the mayoral elections. And so what's more is the mayor has promised that he's going to build many other services in the months to come. So Miles now is being called into his boss's office, and his boss says, hey, you're now in charge of building a website to report minor crimes. And his boss is a micromanager, so he's like, I want proof of concept by the end of the day today on my desk, because the mayor is going to have my job if I don't deliver this. But Miles is not a website designer expert, he's a business expert. But luckily, right, he saw the announcement about Power Pages, so he's already talked to the IT folks. And the IT folks are like, go nuts. I'm busy. I don't have the time to help you with this, but go nuts, create a program. You're not going to publish this site in production without talking to me, but by all means, go set up your site. So we go to powerpages.microsoft.com, and we just click on try it for free. And when I say we, I'm talking about Miles here. So try it for free. Miles can just kind of enter his email address and then start his trial. Now, when we get to the trial environment, we get to this thing that says, hey, welcome, you're on Power Pages, and you can apparently create a site. But the one thing I should point out is that when we started the trial for Power Pages, one of the things that it did is it actually created a developer environment or a test environment for Power Pages. Now, you could actually choose to use your own environment if you had a Dataverse environment that was created in your organization, and you had room. If you had a database in there, you could absolutely go and create a Power Page instance in that environment. You would actually just use the selector here. But in the case of Miles, again, he just needs to build something really quickly to impress his boss. So before Miles even starts creating the site, he'll notice that there's a bunch of templates here on the left. And these templates are always available when you start a website. And, if you kind of pay attention to the list of templates there, well, you'll see there's quite a few templates. I'll dig into the templates a bit later, but, if you look at how this look and feel is designed, it's got the ability for you to search, it's got the ability for you to filter. Obviously, the plan here is to add more templates as the time goes. But as we're going live, we're going to have, as we've gone live and over the next little while, we're planning for about a dozen templates to be made available here. But the other thing that Miles notices when he's testing Power Pages is that there's a learn functionality. And in the learn functionality, right built into the product itself, is the ability for him to look at tutorials and videos, to do design and build, connecting to databases. And then there's stuff that's probably beyond him, like customizing and extending Power Pages, adding security, and then going live, right? So this is one of the things that I want to point out, is that everything you'll see in Power Pages is designed not just to talk to the makers, but to talk to the pro developers and to the IT administrators as well. Because the IT administrators are probably the one that should be going live, because they're going to have to request things like DNS names, certificates, and things like that. All right, but Miles is too busy right now to go through the tutorials. So Miles is going to go straight back home and start creating a site. So just click on create a site. And then, because I didn't pick a template earlier, it's going to prompt me again to pick a template. And I can look at any of the templates. Like this one here is a building permit application. I can actually click on it and I can see kind of what the template's going to look like, some of the components that are in it, the look and feel, and then I can even see some really cool concepts, like some of the functionality that's going to provide, as well as what it looks like in a mobile device or mobile-friendly application. But again, Miles is like, this is too much for me right now. I can't deal with building applications. I just want to build a quick website. So Miles picks this, and he'll pick he'll name the site Merck Proof of Concept, because that's what the project is called. It's the what do we call it? Minor Event Reporting Center. You'll notice that when I create the site, it actually gives it a random URL. randomurl.powerappsportals.com. Now, I could have actually chosen to put an actual proper name here that I wanted to reserve, but it's always going to start by, it's always going to be whatever I chose, .powerappsportals.com. Later, the IT administrators can create custom domains for it, but I always have a unique website that's created, and it's going to verify that this unique website is there. So just don't name it test, because there's probably going to be a lot of test websites out there. All right, so I'll just click on done, and if you test this right now, you may see this screen show up for a little bit. It can take 2 minutes. It can take, I've actually seen people, especially immediately after we make announcements about Power Pages, I've seen people say it took like 2 hours. So just grab yourself a coffee when you create your site, and just be patient. Once the site is created, it right away starts me with a tour, right? Again, remember, Miles has never built a website. He doesn't quite know how to use Power Pages, but it starts by saying, hey, you've got the page editing interface here that you can click through. We've got the ability to add new sections to the page, and we'll show you that. You've got the ability to change the style. So Miles is like, okay, great, because I know the mayor is very specific about the color scheme that we want to use for our site. And what else do I want to do here? I can just click next. I've got the data functionality right away from my site. So here, this is where I can actually connect to my Dataverse data or create new Dataverse tables. So I know that I'll need to come back to that. And then I have the ability to preview the site right away from here by just clicking on preview. And when I click on preview, I get the ability for me to test my desktop on my desktop, or right here, or I have the ability to actually scan the QR code. And if you're fast enough, you could actually scan this QR code, and this is a real site that is live right now. So this is the site that I get based on the template, and it's not quite what Miles is looking for, right? It's got a basic look and feel, but one thing I want to point out is by default, this site is marked as private, and it says only specific people can see this site. So that's the number one thing that we are hearing from our customers is like, well, are you telling me that anybody can just build a website? No. Anybody can, well, yes, everybody can build a website, but those websites are not going to be available publicly until we've actually made it available publicly. It's going to stay private until you choose to change that. And that's important because I need to be able to test my site. I need to be able to share it with my colleagues, but I don't want just anybody to be able to access this. And it knows that I'm signed in as Miles Morales, so that's how it knows that I'm able to do this. All right, so now if I go back to the application, I can just go back to the home page where it showed me I could start editing the content of the page. And then the one thing you'll notice is that here I have the ability to manage the navigation. So this is where I can create pages, I can create sub-pages, and move stuff around, but I'll show you that a little bit later. But Miles is the kind of person that likes to just, start clicking around and start editing. So the first thing I notice is I've got the company name here. I can actually quickly change that. And if you've ever used SharePoint pages, or if you've ever used something like WordPress, this is an experience that you should feel very familiar with, because you can just go click on any element on the page, and whatever element type you're selected, it will actually give you some options. So here I clicked on the company name. I know that the style is a title, but I can actually go change the company name here. I can just type, let's see here. So we'll just call this the city, but you'll notice here I got some settings that I can use to change the look and feel. If I click on the logo, I can do the same thing, but I get a different menu choice for the logo, right? So for example, if I click on image, here I can upload a new image for the logo, or I can use a URL, and in this case, I just upload an image. Now, you'll notice the logo I uploaded doesn't look very pretty quite yet because it's black over dark background. We should probably be fixing that soon. But let's continue to explore a little bit on the page. So I've got this plus here that shows up at different parts of the page, and that gives me the ability to add a section. And when I add a section, I got the ability to pick between 1 column, 2 column, 3 column, 1/3 left, 1/3 right, and then some spacers. So those are the standard kind of elements that we see in most modern sites. And by the way, if you're wondering, well, what kind of styling is it using? This is using Bootstrap behind the scenes. So Bootstrap is used by many, many, many websites out there. It's a responsive layout kind of style. Power Pages right now uses Bootstrap 3.0, which is actually still kind of old, but I promise you that the team is working hard to update this to a more recent version of Bootstrap. But the cool thing about this is knowing that even though this is a custom product, that I can use some style sheets that are standard, like Bootstrap, to be able to style my site. When I'm in the section, I've got the ability to choose different components that I can use, right? So I've got the ability to add texts and buttons and images and videos. I can embed Power BI. By the way, my friend Nikita always likes to say that this is probably the fastest way to share Power BI report to external participants is to create a Power Pages site and just embed a Power BI in it. But you'll see that I can also embed forms and multi-step forms. Multi-step forms would be like a wizard or something like that. And then there's more stuff that we can add, but we'll show you that a little bit later. So if I go to my section, before I add anything, I can actually see, again, the section itself has some toolbar that I can use. And I can just use edit the background. So here I've just went in and made some changes. But I got this button here. And first of all, the button is the wrong color for what the mirror wants to see. And it's got the wrong call to action. So I'm going to go and make some changes here. Edit the button and say file a crime report. And then I need to point to a page. Now, here's the thing. I didn't create my page yet. So I could actually point to a URL if I wanted to send someone to an external website. But I kind of want people to stay within my site because I'm trying to build this site for people to be able to report their minor crimes. So let's just go to add a page. And when I add a page, it asks me, well, what do you want the page name to be? Obviously, I'm going to say report a crime. I do want the page to show up in the main navigation because I want to have hyperlinks available to it. And then I can pick the layouts that I want. And one of the things that I should point out here is you can use the standard layouts like a blank page, landing page, regular page, or a sub page, but you can also use custom layouts. And the problem with custom layouts, well, it's not a problem, but the thing with custom layouts is it really requires someone to know HTML, and Bootstrap to be able to create a layout that meets your needs. But it's absolutely easy for someone who has that experience to be able to create custom layouts and then use them from here. All right, so I've selected my page, my subpage. I now have report a crime. And then, I just kind of, you've seen me now go edit the page, so I'll spare you the watching me edit the page here, but I've done some stuff where I say report a crime. If it's a minor crime and you're in imminent danger, please call 911. Don't file this form. Otherwise, file the form. But I haven't created my form yet. So I've got the page for it, but let's go look at my form. But before we do, because I know my boss wants to see a demo of this very quickly by the end of the day, let me go to the styling area to make sure that I kind of use the right colors for the site. So in the styling area, I've got a whole bunch of different themes that are available, right? It starts with the default theme. I think it's called orange, but you've got a whole bunch of different themes that are available to you. And then for each theme comes with its own color palette and font selection. So here, if I use the main theme that I started with, this is the color palette that's available to me. Now, the cool thing about that is I can go to the individual brand colors and I can select the colors and then kind of explore a little bit and say, okay, well, this, here I can just move on the palette, or I can enter a hexadecimal value, RGB value, alpha value if I want to make it transparent. And so in this case, Miles has the city official website on his next screen, so he's able to copy and paste the colors, which is what I did when I recorded this demo. So I'll go here and I'll just kind of pick the RGB, the hexadecimal value from the website, and I'll enter it here. So now that I've changed that, I'll start seeing some color changes happening in the site. Now, we'll go later and I'll update all the other colors, but I'm starting to see some stuff happening here. Now you'll notice that when I selected the font, the name of the site earlier, and I renamed it to the city, it said this is called a title. Right. So here I have the title object or style, sorry, and I can go customize that. But let's go in and customize the next level, heading 1, which is the big title that shows up on the top of the page. And if I look at the heading 1, I can actually do things like change the fonts, change the weight, the size, and the color. And again, all these things are actually coming from my theme that I've selected. Now, what I could also do is I could actually say, well, hey, I've got some existing CSS styles that are provided by the city, right? By my corporate branding guidelines. Miles probably wouldn't be interested in doing that, but maybe there's a developer that's interested in working with him. So one of the things that's available, and I should point out, is that you can absolutely go and edit you can edit the CSS, and you can actually upload custom CSS, right? And it starts with the Bootstrap CSS, the themes, and then the color theme, the color scheme that you've selected. But you can absolutely, so these are the styles here that apply, but you can absolutely upload a custom CSS if you wanted to. And what you would do with that custom CSS is you could, again, steal the styles from your corporate branding guidelines and apply them here. If you're already using Bootstrap, the great thing is it's going to be a very easy copy and paste from your existing template. But you could also do things like go register custom fonts and things like that. So once I've actually gone and customized my CSS, the site is starting to look a little bit more like the city website that I want. But I still haven't really created my form. And I want a place to store all the requests or all the complaints that people have, the minor event reporting. So if I go to the data workspace, the data workspace kind of gives me a list of all the tables in my Dataverse environment that this website is connected to. By default, you'll see that it's got the feedback table that's connected, because every default website starts with the contact us form that allows you to see how we use forms in Power Pages. But in this case, our friend Miles needs to go create a new table. So because we don't have the data that we need right now to capture minor events. So he goes and clicks on new table, and then he's presented with something that looks a little different than the usual create a table interface in Dataverse, but it's still the same kind of experience. So I can actually go create a table called crime report, and it'll automatically give it a plural name, right? Remember, when we're creating things like Power Pages or Power Apps photos or Power Apps, sorry, you want to make sure that your Dataverse tables are human legible, right? Don't go type it, you call it like TBL underscore something something, because that's just not human friendly. It doesn't make it easy for people to build applications on top of that. So that's what Miles is doing here. He's creating a table called crime report. Click on create. And right away, we have a new crime report table with just a default column called name. We're going to go add more columns because when I file the crime report, I need to provide more information. And one of the first things I need to do is I need to provide the date and time of the incident. And I can pick the data type that I want. So I'm going to pick date and time here. Right. And then this is something that's really important for my crime reports. So I'm going to make it required, but I could also have made it optional or recommended or optional. And hit save. And of course, I'll continue doing this, because I'm trying to build the form that I need here. But one thing here that I'm doing is I want my forms to be anonymous. But one of the things that's available in Power Pages is the ability to create a site that is authenticated. We're going to get to a point where the citizens can actually log in using their Google account, their Twitter account, their Facebook account if they want to. And when that happens, I might want to be able to record who reported this incident, so I can say, here's all the incidents you've reported, right? We're not going to do that today, but we definitely have the ability to do that. So for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to still add the column in my design. I'm going to make it a lookup, and I'm going to make it optional, and I'm going to point to my list of contacts, because every person that is connected on a Power Pages site that is authenticated becomes a contact, so that we can connect to them, even if they're an employee of your organization. And those of you who are familiar with Dataverse or Dynamics, employees normally would be classified users, but what we want to make sure here is that anybody, whether they're connected to Active Directory, B2C, open authentication, or self-registered, is going to create a contact record inside of our system. And we'll use the contact record to be able to track things like activities and things like that. All right, so now I've got my crime report table that's created. And, if I wanted to add other tables, like the one thing I want to point out is those tables are all the tables in your Dataverse environment are available for you to add. One thing that I want to make sure, though, is that just adding the table to Power Pages doesn't mean that people will automatically have access to it. It's very important to know this, because we don't want people to automatically have access to like every contact in your Dataverse environment, because then they could get a list of every citizen in your organization or every citizen in your city. So one of the questions in the chat is, can it only submit to Dataverse or any other data source? You can only submit to Dataverse, but the one thing that we have to remember is Dataverse supports virtual tables. So if you want to connect to a virtual table, let's say a SharePoint list or Oracle database or something like that, you can actually do that as well. But Power Pages is designed to create a secure connection only to Dataverse. It doesn't call separate APIs or things like that. It only goes through Dataverse. And I'll show you that very shortly. So hopefully that answers the question. All right, so now normally if I was creating a new table, I would create some views. I'm not going to really create some views here, but I could create a view to say, like, here's my active crime reports, or here's, crime reports in the last week or something like that. But I can also create forms. Now, when I use Power Pages, there's two types of forms that I have to create, and it can be a little confusing, because the forms that I'm talking about here are forms that are inside my Dataverse environment. So if I go create a new form here, and I go create, again, an anonymous crime report, it'll take me to something that if you've used Power Platform and you use Dataverse, this should look familiar. It allows you to actually create using drag and drop, right, or adding fields. It's not drag and drop. You can also add components. So for those of you who use PCF controls or code components, you can actually add code components in your form as well. So if I wanted to have a show me on the map where the crime happened, or some other cool things like, hey, insert your signature here, you can actually use code components to do this. And there's lots of code components available. If you go to the PCF gallery, you'll see the code components are available aplenty. But for now, I'm just going to focus on adding fields. And when I click on Add Fields, I see the list of columns that are available. And I'll just kind of start picking the columns and dropping them on the page, right? So name, location, description, date of the incident. So now I can actually go in, now that I've saved my form, I can go into my page and I can go add the form, but wait a minute, I forgot something. Before I can actually make my form available, I need to go set up some permissions and stuff, because I said we don't want anybody to just have access to everything that everybody enters. Otherwise, that would be bad. So let's go fix that. So if I go to table permissions, and you look at, there's already one table permission that's created. Again, like I said, every Power Pages site starts by default with having a feedback form that you can use. And you'll see that for the feedback form, I have some permissions that are granted. And the permissions basically say that anybody can create any feedback, but they can't see people's feedback. They can't delete feedback. They can't, make changes to people's feedback. And it's pretty much what we're going to do in Miles' case here, is I'm going to go to a new permission, and I'm going to allow anybody to create a crime report. So here I'm going to create a new table permission. When I create a table permission, I like to give it a good name so I understand, why that permission is there. So I'm calling it Anonymous Crime Report. The table that we're going to point to is the crime report table that we just created. And the access type is global access. That means anybody can do this. Now, I could have also have selected contact access, or account access, or self access. So what are those? Well, if I have a table that has a relationship to a contact record, I can say only let me do things to my records, or records where I'm associated to as a contact. If I have a relationship with an account, I could say, well, only show me things where my employer or the account for my contact is associated to this record. So that would be cool if I wanted to say, here, look at all the orders that your vendor for my company, you can look at all the orders that your company has placed as a vendor, right? That would be one way to do this. And the other way is self access type, which is I can change my own record, my own contact record. So that would be for things like allowing me to upload my own picture, change my date of birth, or things like that. In this case, I'm going to say that anybody has the ability to create a crime report, but you'll notice that I'm saying I can append or append to, right? That's just because in the future I want to be able to add photos to my crime reports, and adding photos to a crime report would be appending a crime report or an attachment, and so that's what we're going to do. Now, I can create roles. When I create roles, I can actually say, by default, I'll say that there's either administrator, anonymous users, or authenticated users, but I could create additional roles. So let's say if I wanted to have a manager role, and a manager has special permissions on top of, let's say, again, we use the organization records or the account records, right? I could say a manager can see all the records for the entire company, but a non-manager for that company can only see their own records, right? I'm able to create these kinds of roles. In this case, I don't want people to have to log in quite yet to be able to create a crime report, so I'll just say anonymous users. And I'll hit save. Now, finally, I've created my table. I've created my page, first of all, to report a crime. I've created my table to capture the crime reports. I've created a form that looks like the way I want it to look like, and then I've added permissions. Now I can actually go to the page and say I want to add a form. Now, I haven't actually created a web form definition that says that basically I want this Dataverse form to be available through the website yet, so I'm just going to do that. I'm going to go pick the table that I created, crime report. I'm going to select the form that I created in Dataverse, and I'm going to give this web form a name. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, well, I'm going to look at the data. On data side here, I can say what kind of activity do I want to happen here. So I could say create a record, view a record, update a record. In this case, I just want to create a new record. I could also say what I want to do when I submit. So when I submit, I want to say a message, or maybe I want to redirect you to another page, I can make those changes here. In this case, what I'll do is I'll hide the form once I've submitted it, and I'll say, yay, you created your record. If I was really wanted to be annoying, I could actually enable CAPTCHAs, and it's probably a good idea for a public website that's anonymous, but I could actually decide here whether I want to have CAPTCHAs to prevent, and CAPTCHAs, I always say CAPTCHAs, a CAPTCHA is that annoying thing that says prove you're not a robot, and it shows you weird numbers and letters, and you have to type what you see. So it will do that automatically for you. Again, I'm not a big fan of CAPTCHAs, but they are there. And then finally, attachments, right? So if I wanted to actually say, I want to allow people to upload pictures of crimes, I could say enable attachments, and then I could decide what do I want to do with these attachments. So that would be requiring an attachment, allowing multiple files to be uploaded, and specifying maximum size and file types and things like that. And so that's basically what I need to do to enable the form. Now, let's just go quickly to the site. And while I'm doing this, let's make sure that I'm doing okay for time and that there are no questions. So one question is Canvas apps. I'm not sure if you want to kind of specify what you mean by that. Can you embed a Canvas app on a Power Pages? Is that the question? Yes. So not yet. You can't embed Canvas. You can only embed model-driven forms. But that's definitely something that would be very useful. Okay, so I've got like a few more minutes. Or how am I doing for time?
I think we're good.
Okay, good. All right. So far, I've shown you kind of how to go create my form and my pages and stuff like that. So if I go to my report a crime form here, I can actually go do that. But now, there you go. So I've got my various forms here that are available and my super fun CAPTCHA. Let me actually go remove the CAPTCHA because it's really annoying to watch me enter a CAPTCHA when I'm trying to demo this. Okay, and then the one thing that I do, you'll notice that I do when I make changes to the page is I don't ever hit save. It automatically saves as I make my changes. And I have the ability to preview. So let's just go do that. And remember, Miles has been trying to build this demo for his boss by the end of the day. Hopefully this page will load by the end of the day. Yeah, it's working. Okay, so it's taking a little bit of time, but while it's doing this, let me show you some other things that I wanted to point out to you. The first thing is the identity providers. And so the identity providers, by default, most sites will be set up so that it allows you to use a local sign-in. So that means that you can create usernames and passwords in your Dataverse environment. But you'll also notice that by default, the Azure Active Directory is available. So if people are logging in to Azure AD, they can also log into your website for your organization. Now, if you wanted to connect to Azure B2C or any of these, Facebook, LinkedIn, Google, Twitter, Microsoft, you can do so. You just need to configure them and provide the information required. You could also create a new provider if you wanted to, and pick based on things like OpenID, for example, or SAML or a federation. Those are all available for you to take advantage of, right? So there's lots of flexibility in terms of how to authenticate your site. And then the other thing that we should point out is when you create a site that allows authentication, you can allow people to log in externally with things like, again, connect to Facebook and Twitter and stuff like that. You want to allow people to register on the site, But you could also say, I'm just going to invite people to this site, and whether people need to have require a unique email to get connected to the site, so you don't have multiple records for that same person. So let's see if my reported crime site is now available. Again, you'll notice that it still says the site is in private, but here I'll just say, small arson. I don't know. I'll just say Queen. I don't even know if it's a real street name, but things gone on fire. And date and time of the incident. I'll just put a random date here. And it says the submission has been completed successfully, right? Not a very exciting message yet. And if I was working on this, I didn't have to do this for my boss by the end of the day. I'd probably do something a bit more exciting. But let's go back to my data table here. And I look at my crime reports. If the demo gods are with me, what I should see is that I have my arson crime that is automatically entered here. Right, so it's very cool. I've been able to build a custom site, make it look like the way I need it, using the styling workspace. I've been able to connect to data, and we've done some cool stuff with it. But there's a few more things that we haven't talked about. One is that I can connect with workflows with this, right? Because this is connected to the Power Platform. So if I wanted to trigger a workflow when an action happens, I could do that and use Power Automate to do that. The other thing too in the setup is that we've talked about the identity providers, we've talked about the permissions. The one thing that we didn't talk about is the visibility, right? When it comes time to going live with a site, I can say the site is a public website, or if I want to keep it private and I want to share it with, let's say, the mayor, for the mayor to go test the app and play with the app, I can just enter the email address right here. Now, you might say, hey, Hugo, you talked about the Fusion team. I didn't see really developers getting involved in here. And I kind of just saw a little bit of features for the IT admin. The one thing I wanted to show is that within Power Pages itself, I have the ability to actually edit the code directly from here. And when I click on edit the code, it actually opens it in Visual Studio Code directly from the web. Now, I can also use, if I have the Power App CLI, I forgot to sign in. If I use the Power App CLI or the command line interface or the Power Platform command line interface, I can actually synchronize the entire website on my desktop and edit it on my desktop and push it back and forth. This is just to make it easy for people to kind of use the site and to view, like if you are familiar with Bootstrap, you'll notice that these styles like column MD12 means I want a full width column to show up. But I could actually go in here and I could edit the HTML. If I wanted to edit the JavaScript or add some JavaScript, I could do that from here. And if I wanted to add some custom CSS, I could absolutely do that. And if we had a little bit more time, I would actually probably go in and edit some kind of crazy CSS here. But I'm just going to say, please, here, let's just do this. Please don't be silly. Okay, so if I save that, and if I go back to my site, I can sync. You'll see that I should see, again, assuming the demo gods are with me today, there you go. The content is updated dynamically. All right, so now I've gone in, again, I've edited a page that looks a little bit more like what I want it to look like. I've updated my navigation. I've created the form. And I've been able to actually use editing code. Now, one thing that I could do also is if I had custom CSS that was introduced, and I can't remember if I created custom CSS. Also in my custom CSS, I could actually go edit the CSS directly in Visual Studio Code. So it makes it easier for people who are just learning maybe the syntax, the HTML syntax, to see how things are built. But if a pro developer wants to add some crazy sections that are not easy to build, just using the what you see is what you say, what you get interface, they can absolutely do that as well. What I like to do is I like to go to the Bootstrap website. They have cool components that are pre-templated. I'll copy and paste the code and I'll put it in here to actually right away take advantage of this. I should keep some time for questions, but this is a quick overview of someone like Miles Morales, building a quick website that allows people to go in and fill reports. And in our story, fictitious story here, Miles was able to show us to the mayor. The mayor loved it, and he was like, "Let's go live tomorrow." And then Miles, freaked out a little bit. But so if I wanted to look at what I would need to do if I needed to go live, obviously I need to talk to my IT admins. But this is where the go live checklist is built in to the site, where I can actually go through the list of checking things I need to do, run the site checker, pick my licenses, convert from trial to production, and so on and so forth. You'll notice here I have CDN, and I've got web app firewall to protect my website, and I can provide custom domains as well. One last thing that I forgot to mention, I can take this website as is and I can build it into a progressive web application, a PWA. Progressive web applications are web applications that are packaged into a mobile application for your cell phone. So if you've ever used Uber, Twitter, Yumly, any of these sites, they're usually PWA. They're a progressive web application. It's a website running inside of an app on your mobile device. And the cool thing about that, obviously, is it makes it easier for you to update your content without having to redeploy an app every single time. But that's it for me. Let's just open it up for questions. Does it support multi-language? It does. Power Apps Portal supports multiple languages. And so what would happen is if you wanted to enable multiple pages, multiple languages, you would go to the Dataverse environment. Here, let me just do that quickly while we're talking. You would go to your Dataverse environment, that is where this is connected to, and you would, just like you would do for, let's say, Dynamics or Dataverse, you would say add a language support. So English, French, Spanish. And when you do that, every page that gets created, I think I would do this right here, advanced settings. Every page that gets created will actually create an instance of it in every language that you've enabled for that site. So that allows you to have multiple layouts for different page languages. It also allows you to support things like string tokens that you could use to embed in the page. So you don't want to necessarily retranslate or have one copy of every page for every language. You just want the same page, but to embed different string resources. You can do that as well. It's in Power Pages right now. That experience is not the best. You need to switch languages back and forth to edit it. But as we're evolving Power Pages, we're going to make it easier for people to edit in multiple languages. Let me go to, I need to remember where that's done. Languages, there you go. And this, by the way, this is another one that seems to be a legacy functionality. Adding a language to a site takes like 15 minutes before the record gets created. So click on that, go get some coffee, and then come back. And as you can see, it's very slow. But while we're waiting, I'll just move on to next questions. Yes, so I didn't actually mention the pricing. I always tried to avoid mentioning the pricing. The pricing is a lot friendlier now, and I can grab some pricing slides for that if you're interested. But the way it used to work before is it used to be per I'll just try to remember here. It was per logins, right? And now what we're doing is we're doing it basically per. We're going to have you can have internal users, if you will, right? So your users who are already licensed for Dynamics, Power Apps, per app or per user, those people are already licensed for Power Pages, right? And you can use those licenses for Power Pages. Then, if you need to add additional people to log into to Power Pages who are maybe your employees, they're internal people, they just have not been licensed already, there's one set of license you can buy. If you want to allow for external participants to log in, there's a different set of licenses that you can buy, and it's based on the number of I'll have to actually pick it up because we've just recently switched it. But the thing that we've tried to do with the new Power Pages licensing is to make it easier for you to predict what you're going to get, because it was practically impossible to keep track of like how many, where are people going to go and how are they going to use the site. Now, the other thing to talk about licensing is that you can do prepaid license. But you can also do pay-as-you-go licenses, and pay-as-you-go license should be coming in November, so right now. And you're going to buy it through basically the same way you do it for the Power Platform through Azure. And why that's useful is because if you're building something that is seasonal, maybe, where you're going to get bombarded with traffic 1 month of the year, and the rest of the year you're kind of coasting with just a limited number of users, you shouldn't have to buy licenses for that big month of the year for the whole year. So what you're able to do is you're able to say, well, here's our basic license that we want to use, and then here, when I have extra traffic that I need to deal with, I can buy extra licenses only for that time period. So hopefully that answers the question. If not, yeah, and Lisa Crespi has absolutely a great Power Pages pricing. I think personally, we've done a better job with pricing and licensing. Licensing is always very confusing, it seems like, but we've done a better job. So if you have a Dynamics 365 license, you have access to Power Pages. If you got an M365 license, but you are not granted a per app or per user license for Power Platform, you would need to get an additional license for Power Pages. Yes, and pay as you go through Azure is awesome. Okay, so here it looks like it's loaded the thing. So if I wanted to add, French, I would just click here, I would click apply, and then I would go have a little nap because it's going to take a little bit of time. Of course, as I say this, it's making it go fast, but it's going to take some time because what it's doing here is it's going to go to every single resource in your system and go get the location resource for this. And then what you would see in the page structure here is you would see that I have now the English and French version of these pages that I can use. And Bernier is French, yes. And feel free to unmute if you have questions. And I can keep going if people don't stop me. Thank you. So one thing we haven't done in today's session is we haven't shown how I could actually authenticate my users and show them my actual or their records, right? So the records that are only for them. I've kind of made allusion to it, but we haven't done it. If you'd like me to come in at a later time and do you more demo on that, I'm happy to do that. I realize that's a lot of material to cover in over in a bit, an hour and a bit. Thank you, everyone. Hark?
Thank you, Hugo. This was great. Let me just take over the sharing for a second.
And I'll stick around for questions.
Okay. So as we mentioned in the last few meetups, we're transitioning to the Power Platform user groups. We have now, I think, over 80 members that transitioned from the meetup groups, and we're looking to finish that switch or to basically close our meetup user groups within the next few months. So you can take a picture of the QR code if you've not registered to the Microsoft community site already and join our user group over there. Hopefully everybody is aware of this, that the Microsoft Dynamics 365 and Power Platform Release Wave 2 are now available online, and or you can download the documents for that. There's a lot of updates that started tickling it in last month, and they will continue until April, both in Power Pages and the rest of the Power Platform and Dynamics. So this is a great read if you want to go over 800 to 1,000 pages of content.
Can I share a secret URL that's not so secret?
Sure.
If you go to experience.dynamics.com, and I'll just paste it in the chat here, you have basically a new website that allows you to manage your upcoming release waves. So if you go to roadmap, I guess. Actually, I'll find the proper URL here. I could have sworn it was experiencedynamics.com, but you can actually see all the release waves, and you can actually create your own personalized release wave, so that you can, let's say if you're working with a customer, and they're building an app, and it's using Power Apps and Power Automate, you can see what's coming up for that app and what's going to affect it. So I'll get the URL and I'll share it in the chat.
Okay, thank you. And then finally, we're not set exactly on the dates, but our next couple of events are already lined up. Sometime next month we'll be demoing some of the features of Wave 2 as they become more available or move from preview to GA. And probably in January or beginning of the year, we'll have another session on Dynamics marketing with Amy Holden. So that is the plan for the upcoming events. If there's any additional questions for Hugo, please feel free. If not, thanks again, Hugo, and for everybody else joining us tonight. This was a really great presentation and kind of nice to see how much change from Power Apps Portal to Power Pages.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Great session, Hugo. Thank you very much. My
pleasure. I pasted the actual URL, experiencedynamics.com/release plans. And it allows you to filter through, again, what you're interested in. And it's in preview, so you folks are some of the few who are made aware of this.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Anybody else has any more questions, or can we call it a night and let everybody have a shot of tequila or something?
I'm in. Well, you have my contact info. If you need to reach out, please don't hesitate to do so.
Thank you.
Thank you for being an awesome audience. We'll see you soon, I hope.
Thanks a lot.
Great.
Bye.
Bye.